General Hospital spoilers, Liz's shocking will. The heir who surprises Lucky and Rick. In the dark corners of Port Charles, secrets rarely stay buried, and Elizabeth Weber Baldwin's will is no exception. When tragedy strikes and the beloved nurse is declared brain-dead following a tragic accident at General Hospital, her final wishes send shockwaves through the community, especially her former loves, Lucky Spencer and Rick Lansing. But no one could have predicted the bombshell that lay hidden in her last testament, an heir neither man expected, and a truth that changes everything. It begins with a routine day gone wrong. Liz had just clocked in for her late-night shift at GH when an electrical fire broke out in the East Wing. As chaos erupted, Liz ran toward the danger, desperate to help patients trapped inside. Her final act of bravery resulted in several lives saved, but at a devastating cost. Liz inhaled too much smoke and suffered a traumatic head injury when a ceiling beam collapsed. Hours later, in a quiet corner of the ICU, Finn, Portia, and Monica delivered the heartbreaking prognosis: Liz would never regain consciousness. Her living will, updated just months prior, instructed the hospital to withdraw life support if she was declared brain-dead. Word traveled fast, and soon the hospital was flooded with mourners. Lucky flew in from Ireland with Cameron, while Rick arrived from Albany. Violet clung to Finn, confused and crying, while Jake stood stoically, struggling to comprehend that his mother, the woman who had been the strongest constant in his life, was gone. But none of them were ready for what came next. Liz's attorney, Diane Miller, gathered a group of her closest loved ones in Monica's study at the Quartermain estate. The atmosphere was tense, eyes red from crying, hearts heavy with grief. Diane, in her signature calm but piercing tone, began reading the will aloud. At first, the contents were expected. Liz left her paintings to her sons, entrusted her home to be sold, and the proceeds divided equally among Jake, Aiden, and Cameron. Her nursing journals and legacy work would be donated to GH for future training nurses. But then Diane paused, her expression shifting. "There is one final clause," she said slowly. Elizabeth requested this be read in person, to all present, with no media or public attention. She pulled out a sealed envelope, handwritten in Liz's signature cursive. Inside was a letter addressed to Lucky and Rick, two men who once held her heart, and a name none of them had ever heard before. "I have one more child," Liz's voice echoed in Diane's steady tone. "Her name is Estella." Gasps filled the room. Lucky stared at Diane, disbelief etched across his face. Rick blinked rapidly, as if trying to process the surreal moment. "That's not possible," Lucky muttered. "She would have told me. She would have told all of us." But Liz had kept Estella a secret for a reason. The letter revealed that over a decade ago, during one of Liz's lowest points, a time between her relationships with Lucky and Rick, she became pregnant. Fearful of judgment, overwhelmed by trauma, and determined to protect the child from Port Charles's chaos, she made the painful decision to give the baby up for adoption. The adoptive parents were friends of a doctor Liz had met during her volunteer work abroad in Africa. But fate, always a meddler, brought Estella back into her life 5 years ago. When Liz volunteered on a health mission to Malawi, she reunited with the girl, now a teenager, whose striking blue eyes and fierce compassion for others reminded her too much of Lucky. DNA tests confirmed the truth. Liz and Estella stayed in touch secretly through letters, video calls, and visits overseas. Liz wanted to wait until the time was right to tell her sons, Rick and Lucky. That time never came. Now, Estella, 17, is on a flight to Port Charles. Liz's final request was that her hidden daughter be brought home and acknowledged as her own. Lucky is a man who's battled demons, addiction, heartbreak, betrayal, and yet this secret shakes him to his core. The possibility that Estella might be his biological child forces him into emotional freefall. Memories flood back. The late nights he spent searching for Liz when she ran off, the missed phone calls, the years apart after his exit to Ireland. Haunted by the mystery and filled with guilt, Lucky begins retracing the past. He turns to Sam, who now works with Spinelli's tech firm, to help track Liz's communications, flight logs, and medical records from her time abroad. What he uncovers raises even more questions. Liz's final entries in her journal suggest that she did consider telling him the truth. One haunting line reads, "Lucky has a right to know. She looks just like him." Still, without a paternity test, nothing is certain. And that's where Rick comes in. Rick, ever the lawyer, initially doubts the whole story. But something about the way Liz wrote his name beside Lucky's in the letter gnaws at him. He remembers the brief rekindling of their romance during one of Liz's lowest points, the summer Rick returned after Molly was diagnosed with leukemia. Liz had leaned on him, emotionally and physically. Haunted by the thought and conflicted about what it means, Rick agrees to a DNA test. The results will take time, but the emotional fallout begins immediately. He finds himself walking through GH's pediatric wing, seeing children laughing and playing, wondering what kind of father he could have been had he known. Molly, now a young legal powerhouse herself, is stunned to learn she might have a half-sister. She encourages Rick to make things right, regardless of biology. "She's Liz's," Molly tells him. "That makes her part of us." Cameron, now in graduate school, is the first to express anger. "Why would she hide this from us?" he demands. "After everything we've been through, Franco, Drew, all of it, why keep one more secret?" Jake, on the other hand, is oddly calm. Having lived through identity crises of his own, he seems to understand the weight Liz must have carried. She did what she thought was best. Maybe we should give Estella a chance. Aiden is torn. He's only 15 and had been Liz's emotional anchor after Franco's death. Now, he's grieving all over again, and the idea of sharing his mom with a sister he never knew is disorienting. But when Estella arrives, everything changes. Dressed in worn jeans, a leather satchel over her shoulder, Estella arrives at the Metro Court. She's striking, blue eyes with flecks of hazel, a quiet confidence in her voice, and a guarded but warm smile. Laura, stunned by the resemblance to Lucky, invites her to stay at her home while they sort through the legal and emotional logistics. Meanwhile, Estella visits Liz's memorial wall at GH, leaving a single sunflower and whispering in Swahili, "Asante kwa kunipa maisha." "Thank you for giving me life." Port Charles begins to buzz with speculation. Who is this girl? Why does she matter? Some assume she's another Cassadine twist, others think she's after money. But Anna, ever intuitive, suspects the truth runs deeper. Anna meets with Estella privately and is moved by the teen's depth and resilience. She offers her a part-time job at the PCPD as a liaison for youth wellness, giving Estella a foothold in the community. But Estella has plans of her own, plans that will leave everyone stunned. In her time abroad, Estella witnessed poverty, trauma, and resilience firsthand. Inspired by her biological mother's commitment to healing, Estella reveals she's been accepted into a special international pre-med program. But she wants to stay in Port Charles long enough to start a foundation in Liz's honor, the Elizabeth Weber Center for Youth Mental Health. Monica and Terry throw their full support behind the initiative. GH agrees to host the center on its newly renovated East Wing, fitting, since Liz gave her life saving that very space. As Estella's influence grows, so does her connection to her brothers. Aiden warms to her quickly, bonding over art and music. Jake teaches her how to skateboard. Even Cameron, at first resistant, sees the same fierce independence in Estella that he loved in Liz. Weeks later, the results arrive. Everyone gathers again: Rick, Lucky, Molly, the boys, and Estella. Diane opens the envelope, her voice almost trembling. The DNA test confirms Rick Lansing is Estella's biological father. Gasps again. Lucky closes his eyes for a moment, then opens them and nods. "Okay," he whispers. "She's still family." Rick, stunned, takes a moment to process. Then, slowly, he approaches Estella, who looks equally stunned. "I may have missed 17 years, he says, "but I want to know you if you'll let me." Estella nods, her eyes full of unshed tears. "I'd like that." As the months unfold, Estella becomes a cornerstone of a new era in Port Charles. Her foundation thrives, helping teens like Oscar once was, and those still navigating grief like Wiley, Georgie, and Donna. Rick slowly rebuilds his reputation, aided by Molly and Estella. Lucky, now working with Doctors Without Borders again, promises to stay more connected, having found healing in the daughter he didn't create but who reminded him of the woman he never stopped loving. And at General Hospital, a new plaque is unveiled. In honor of Elizabeth Weber Baldwin, nurse, mother, warrior. Her love heals still.